There was a lesson Neville Goddard never finished teaching, not because he ran out of time, not because the lecture ended, but because someone walked out. And when that person walked out, Neville stopped, looked at Abdullah. And Abdullah said something Neville never repeated in public. He said, "That's the real reason most people fail. They want God's power without God's silence." This happened in the late 1940s. The exact year doesn't matter. What matters is what preceded it. Neville had been teaching publicly for nearly a decade. Thousands had heard him. Hundreds had succeeded. Manifested homes, money, relationships, health. Everything he promised was possible. But Abdullah noticed something Neville didn't speak about in lectures. He noticed the ones who succeeded and still came back. Still seeking, still asking, still wanting more. And he noticed the ones who succeeded once and disappeared, never returned, never asked another question. And the difference between those two groups was not ability, not faith, not persistence. It was something else, something Abdullah called the refusal. Neville hesitated when Abdullah suggested they demonstrated, not in front of a large group, but in front of a small one, 7 people. Students who had been attending for over a year. Students who had manifested successfully. Students who, by all accounts, understood the law. Neville hesitated because he knew what would happen. Knew that some of them would see what they weren't ready to see, and seeing it would fracture something. Not their ability to manifest, but their reason for manifesting. And a person without a reason, even if they have the power, is more dangerous than a person with neither. But Abdullah insisted. He said, "They think they want the truth. Let's see if they do." And so the lesson was arranged. A small room, no notes, no recording. Just 7 students and 2 teachers. And what unfolded that night is why Neville never described it in any lecture afterward. Why he referenced it only once, briefly, in a private conversation years later. And why the students who were there never spoke of it in detail. Only in fragments. Only in warnings. Most people think Neville taught manifestation, that his core teaching was about getting what you want through assumption and imagination. And on the surface, that's accurate. That's what he taught publicly. But what he avoided teaching publicly was this: manifestation is not the destination. It's the test. The test to see if you'll keep seeking once you've gotten. And most people fail that test, not because they stop manifesting, but because they keep manifesting, keep seeking, keep assuming, keep desiring, and the cycle never ends. And a cycle that never ends is not mastery, it's addiction. And addiction, even to spiritual power, is still bondage. Abdullah saw this in people long before Neville did. He would watch students manifest their desires and then immediately create new desires, new lacks, new gaps to fill. And he would say, "They're not using the law. The law is using them. It's giving them just enough to keep them seeking, just enough to keep them believing the next thing will complete them. And the next thing never does, and they don't notice, because noticing would mean stopping, and stopping would mean sitting with what they already are, and what they already are feels like nothing. So they keep manifesting nothing into something, and calling it progress. Neville didn't disagree, but he also didn't teach this openly, because teaching it openly meant telling people that their desires were traps, that their seeking was the problem, that the very thing they came to learn, manifestation, was the thing keeping them from what they actually needed. And what they actually needed was not more power. It was the willingness to stop using power, to stop seeking, to stop assuming they were incomplete. And that willingness, that capacity to stop, could not be taught. It can only be revealed through a test. A test most people would refuse. And refusal was the point. The lesson began simply. Neville spoke for about 20 minutes. Standard teaching, assumption, imagination, persistence. The students listened, took notes, nodded. They had heard this before, had applied it, had succeeded. But then Neville stopped, looked at Abdullah, and Abdullah stood, walked to the center of the room, and said, "Everything Neville just taught you is true, and it will work for the rest of your life. You can manifest anything you assume with enough conviction. But there's something he didn't tell you, something I'm going to tell you now. And after I tell you, you'll have a choice. You can leave, or you can stay. And if you stay, you'll be asked to do something. And doing it will change what manifestation means to you permanently." No one moved. No one spoke. Abdullah continued, "The reason you're here is because you want something. You've manifested before, but you still want more. And that wanting is what keeps you seeking, keeps you attending lectures, keeps you practicing techniques. And I'm going to show you something tonight. I'm going to show you what happens when you stop wanting. Not by suppressing desire, not by denying it, but by seeing it for what it is. A mechanism, a pattern, a way of avoiding what you already are. And once you see that, once you see it clearly, desire loses its grip. Not because you became enlightened, but because you saw the trick. And once you see a trick, you can't be fooled by it again." He paused, looked at each of them, then said, "Here's the test. I'm going to ask you to assume something right now, in this room, with all of us watching, and you're going to assume it fully, completely, the way Neville taught you. And if you do it correctly, it will manifest. Immediately. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Right now. And when it manifests, you're going to be asked to refuse it. To let it go. To walk away from it. Without taking it. Without using it. Without claiming it. And if you can do that, if you can manifest something and then refuse it, you'll understand what this teaching actually is. And if you can't, you'll leave. And you should leave. Because what comes after this is not for people who still need things." One of the students, a woman who had been attending for over 2 years, raised her hand, asked, "What are we going to assume?" Abdullah said, "Something small, something you want right now, something in this room, something tangible, not money, not a person, just an object, something you would take if it were offered to you." Another student asked, "And if we refuse it, what happens?" Abdullah said, "Nothing happens." That's the point. Nothing happens. And you'll see that nothing happening is not a problem. It's completion. And completion is what you've been seeking all along. Not through getting, but through not needing to get. Neville stood, looked at the students, sighed. You don't have to do this. This is not required. You can leave now. And everything I've taught you will still work. You'll still manifest. You'll still create. You'll still assume. But if you stay, if you do this test, something will shift. And I can't tell you what that shift is, because it's different for everyone. But I can tell you this. Some of you will leave this room and never come back. Not because you failed, but because you succeeded. And success at this level means you don't need this anymore. Don't need me. Don't need lectures. Don't need teachings. You'll just live. And living without seeking is something most people can't do, even when they have the power to get anything. Silence. Long silence. Then one of the students stood, walked out, didn't say anything, just left. The door closed. 6 remained. Abdullah nodded, sighed. Good. He wasn't ready. And that's fine. Readiness is not something you force. It's something you recognize, or you don't. He looked at the remaining 6, sighed. Now, each of you, assume something. Something in this room, something you want. Assume you have it. Feel it. Make it real in your mind. Completely real. And when it's real, when you can feel it as yours, raise your hand. They closed their eyes. Minutes passed. One by one, hands went up. 6 hands, all raised. Abdullah said, Good. Now, open your eyes. And I'm going to place in front of each of you the thing you assumed. And you're going to see it. Touch it. Hold it. And then you're going to give it back. Not because I'm taking it, but because you're choosing to release it. And releasing it is the test, not assuming it. Releasing it. What happened next is described differently by the few who spoke of it, but the pattern is the same. Abdullah walked to a cabinet, pulled out 6 objects, small things, a pen, a book, a watch, a coin, a photograph, a key, placed one in front of each student, and each student looked at the object and recognized it, not because they had seen it before, but because it matched what they had assumed, exactly, down to details they hadn't consciously imagined. And the recognition was not comforting, it was disturbing, because it proved something they had only believed theoretically. That assumption creates, immediately, not eventually. And immediate creation meant immediate responsibility. And responsibility without the buffer of time is unbearable for most people. Abdullah said, Take it, hold it, feel it. It's yours. You assumed it. It appeared. This is the law working, perfectly, completely. Now, give it back. 3 of them did. Place the object back on the table, without hesitation, without attachment. Just placed it back and sat. The other 3 hesitated. One held the book, opened it, looked at Abdullah, sighed. But I wanted this. I assumed it. Why would I give it back? Abdullah said, Because wanting it is why you're still here. And being here means you're still seeking. And seeking means you're not complete. And this test shows you whether you're ready to be complete, or whether you still need things to feel real. The student holding the book sat for a long time, then placed it back, slowly, reluctantly. The other two did the same. And when all 6 objects were back on the table, Abdullah looked at them, sighed. You just did something most people will never do. You manifested something, and then refused it. And in refusing it, you proved you don't need it. And not needing it is what makes you free. Not getting it, not having it, not needing it. And now, you can manifest anything, but you don't have to. And not having to is the only freedom that matters. One of the students asked, "So we're not supposed to manifest anymore?" Neville answered, "No, you're supposed to manifest when it's necessary, when it serves, when it aligns, but not when it's compulsive, not when it's filling a void, not when it's proving something. And the only way to know the difference is to manifest something and then release it. And if you can release it without regret, without feeling like you lost something, then you're free to manifest from freedom. But if you can't release it, if holding it feels necessary, then you're still manifesting from lack. And lack will never be filled, no matter how much you get." 2 more students stood, walked out, quietly, no explanation, just left. 4 remained. And those 4, according to the fragments that exist, never attended another lecture. Not because they rejected the teaching, but because they had completed it. They had seen that manifestation is not the goal. It's the proof that you can. And once you have proof, you don't need to keep proving. You just live. And living from completion means you manifest when it's natural, not when it's needed. Because nothing is needed. Everything already is. Abdullah said one more thing before the lesson ended. He said, "Most people will spend their entire lives manifesting, and they'll call it mastery. But it's not mastery. It's dependency. Dependency on the act, on the proof, on the feeling of creating. And that dependency is no different than any other addiction. It feels good, it works, but it never completes. And incompletion is what keeps you seeking. And seeking is what keeps you from recognizing you were never incomplete. You were just convinced you were. By desire, by wanting, by the belief that the next thing will make you whole. And the next thing never does. And this test shows you that. Shows you that you can have anything. And it won't complete you. And seeing that, really seeing it, is what ends the lesson. Not because you stopped learning, but because there's nothing left to learn. You already are what you were seeking. And seeking stops, not through effort, through recognition. And recognition is not taught, it's revealed. Through refusal, the lesson ended. The 4 students left. And Neville never described this publicly, never mentioned the test, never explained what happened to those who stayed or those who left. But years later, in a private conversation, someone asked him, "Why don't you teach that anymore? The test Abdullah did?" And Neville said, "Because people don't come to learn how to stop. They come to learn how to get. And teaching them to stop when they're still trying to get is cruel. They're not ready. And forcing readiness breaks people. So I teach them how to get. And I hope that getting enough will show them what Abdullah showed those four. That getting is not the point. Stopping is. The students who walked out that night continued manifesting, continued attending lectures, continued seeking, and some of them succeeded greatly, manifested wealth, health, influence, everything they wanted, but they never stopped wanting, never stopped seeking, never stopped attending, and their success, as large as it was, never felt complete. Because completion is not found in accumulation, it's found in refusal, in the willingness to manifest something and walk away. And walking away is not something most people can do, even when they have everything. The students who stayed never spoke publicly about what happened, but the few who knew them said they changed. Not in dramatic ways, but in small, noticeable ways. They stopped talking about manifestation, stopped attending lectures, stopped seeking teachers, and when asked why, they would say, "I already know how. I just don't need to anymore." And not needing to, while still being able to, is the rarest form of freedom. Because most people who can do something feel compelled to keep doing it, to prove it, to use it, to validate it. But the ones who stayed in that room learned something else. They learned that power without compulsion is peace, and peace is not something you manifest. It's something you recognize. When you stop trying to manifest anything. Abdullah exposed the secret test that night, not to reveal a hidden technique, but to reveal a hidden trap. The trap of spiritual seeking, the trap of using power to feel complete, the trap of manifesting endlessly because stopping feels like failure. And the test was simple. Manifest something, then refuse it. And in refusing it, see that you never needed it. And not needing it is what you were actually seeking all along, not the thing. The freedom from needing the thing. And that freedom cannot be taught. It can only be demonstrated. Through refusal. Through the willingness to let go of what you just created. And letting go is not loss. It's recognition. Recognition that you were never incomplete. You were just convinced you were. And the convincing is what keeps you manifesting, keeps you seeking, keeps you attending lessons. And the lesson ends when you see the convincing for what it is, a pattern, a mechanism, a trap. And once you see a trap, you stop walking into it. Not because someone told you to stop, but because you saw it. And seeing is enough. This is why Neville refused to describe the test publicly, because describing it turns it into a technique. And techniques are for people who want to get something. But the test is not about getting. It's about refusing. And refusal is not a technique. It's a recognition. A moment when you see that you can have anything, and you choose not to. Not because you're suppressing desire, but because desire stopped being necessary. An unnecessary desire is just noise. And when the noise stops, what remains is not emptiness. It's completion. And completion is not something you achieve. It's something you recognize. When you stop trying to achieve anything. Abdullah looked at the four who stayed and said, "You'll never need another teacher. Not because you know everything, but because you know the one thing that matters. You know, you're already complete. And completion doesn't seek, doesn't want. doesn't manifest compulsively. It just is. And being is enough. And that was the last thing he said. The lesson ended. The students left, and the test was never repeated. Because it didn't need to be. The ones who needed to see it saw it, and the ones who didn't walked out before it was shown. And both groups were exactly where they needed to be. The ones who stayed stopped seeking. The ones who left kept seeking. And seeking is not wrong. It's just incomplete. And incompletion is what most people live with. Because completion requires refusal. And refusal requires seeing. And seeing requires a test most people will never take. Because taking it means risking everything you thought you wanted for something you can't name, something that feels like nothing, but is everything? And everything that feels like nothing is what Neville refused to describe. Because describing it makes it sound like loss. And it's not loss. It's the end of needing to gain. And the end of needing to gain is the beginning of something else. Something Abdullah called God's silence. And silence is not empty. It's complete. And completion is what ends the lesson.